Hi guys, welcome back to the vlogs.
Okay, so let's talk sine, cosine, and tangent real quick. Okay, what is the phrase I want you to remember? SOHCAHTOA. Okay? SOHCAHTOA. What does the SO part stand for? Sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. What does this part stand for?
Cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse.
Okay. And the last one, what's TOE stand for?
Tangent equals over.
Opposite
over
over
adjacent.
Oh my land.
Over adjacent.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't know that, you will continue to struggle. You have to know that. You also have to know that we are looking through the angle that it's talking about. So if it says angle A or angle 20 degrees, it's from that angle what is opposite from it, what is adjacent to it. The hypotenuse never changes, okay? Now, we use that formula to set up proportions or ratios to solve for side lengths, correct? Okay? We can also use that formula to solve for the angle when they don't give it to us. Let's say they give us a right triangle, okay? A right triangle like this. And they want to know what is, let's say they give us this right here, okay? And they give us something over here. We're just going to pretend like this is whatever. They want us to figure out what is angle A. Okay? What information do we have going on right now?
Opposite.
Opposite and
the hypotenuse.
so you would use sine A equals 6 over 12. Now yesterday we settled there and we put 6 over 12 in our calculator and got a decimal. Okay? That's not an angle measurement, correct? We're going to talk about how to get the angle measurement today. It's called using the inverse. Okay? An inverse function. When you have an inverse of an equation, that means that when I plug that equation into the original equation, they will come out to equal 1 or x, whatever. They're going to come out to just equal itself, okay? Or it's going to come out to equal something simplified like x. So when I take the inverse, it satisfies the equation. On your calculator for sine, cosine, and tangent, do you see above those buttons how it has sine to the -1, cosine to the -1, tangent to the -1? That's the inverse button. To get the inverse button, you press second and then you press that. When you are finding an angle measurement, you use inverse. Okay? So angle measurement equals inverse. Well, I decided I didn't want it to work late. Okay, so angle measurement is inverse. If you are finding a side length is just normal, okay? Is using those normal buttons. So, if sine A equals x, then the inverse of sine x equals A. So, if sine A, if I know that sine A equals x, then that means the inverse of sine x would equal A. I can work it backwards. Okay, I can work my equation backwards to figure out what's going on. So, if I know that sine 30 degrees equals 1/2 in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, remember we discussed that yesterday, 30, 60, 90. So, if sine 30 degrees equals 1/2, that means the inverse of 1/2 equals 30. So I want you to plug that into your calculator. I want you to press second sine and then 1/2 and press enter. What do you get? 30. That's how you find a degrees. What? You have to do 1 divided by 2 into parentheses. Okay, so when I am given the proportion, like this here, tell me what this angle would equal. What does sine A equal at 6 over 12? How would you do that?
But you still Would you, simplify it?
Yes, good Kayla, so if I simplify, what is it?
1/2, so
Which
30
would be 30
degrees.
degrees, yes, good, always simplify, good call. Okay,
Come at me, Bryson. What?
okay, so here's a triangle. It wants to know what are the acute angles of this triangle. So I wanna know what angle A is and what angle B is, okay? We're gonna do it all three ways, sine, cosine, tangent. We should get the same answer for sine, cosine, and tangent, okay? If I'm setting up with sine for angle A, let's focus on angle A first, okay? A. If I set it up with sine, the inverse of sine, what is it going to equal? Sine is what over what?
Opposite over hypotenuse.
So what is it gonna equal?
3/5?
3/5. Now
Like the
tell me,
opposite.
what does that come out to be? What's the inverse of sine at 3/5? Let's round to one decimal place.
Okay. 36.7.
Point what?
36.7.
Oh, okay, I have 36.9.
Oh, 9. My bad. I was looking at the wrong number.
So it's 36.9 degrees. Now, let's take a look at, what if I used the inverse of cosine in this case? What's cosine? Jason over hypotenuse, so it's what? Okay, what is the inverse of 4/5?
Same thing.
Same thing. Now, tell me about tangent. What is tangent? It's what over what?
Opposite over adjacent.
Opposite over adjacent, 3/4. What's that inverse come out to be?
Same thing.
Okay, so when you are doing this on your homework, okay, if they give you all three, you can choose which one you want to use. If they only give you two, you have to go off of what they give you, set up sine, cosine, or tangent. But if they give you all three, Korea could solve it with tangent, L could solve it with sine, it's going to give you the same answer, okay?
Is this what we're doing?
This is
Just
what
like-
we're doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're doing more sine, cosine, and tangent, and just adding inverse into it. So it's yesterday's stuff plus today's stuff.
Wait, what do you mean by the inverse? Like,
The inverse, when I have an inverse, all functions have an inverse. They have something that's, Mr. Rice hates when I say this, but they have something that's opposite of it, okay? So, that's the best way for me to explain it to you. So an inverse function means that if I take the equation, okay, if I take this equation, x plus 12 equals y, there's my function, okay? To find the inverse of that function, I switch x and y and resolve for y. So I would say y plus 12 equals x, which means y equals x minus 12. This is the inverse of this function. Here's why. If I plug this equation into that equation, so plug x minus 12 in for the y there, okay? X plus 12 equals x minus 12. What do you end up getting? X equals x. All inverse functions will come out to equal themselves.
so it's called the inverse because we usually have the percent. or
Because
like
we usually have the
that's-
angle and we're finding the proportions. But if I have the proportions and I find the angle, I'm doing the same thing but in reverse.
Okay.
Okay? So that's what an inverse function does. Now, let's talk about how do we find angle B. Now, pretend, okay, here's the deal. On your homework, if I find angle A, I then just add this to 90 and subtract it from 180. I want us to practice, so I want us to find angle B by using sine, cosine, and tangent, okay? So, let's look at B. Let's say the inverse of B for sine is what?
Four or five.
4 over 5, opposite hypotenuse. So what does that come out to be?
$53.1.
53.1, okay? Which, if I take 53.1 and add it to 36.9, I'm going to get that other 90 I was missing. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, once again, if I want to set up, I'm switching the order on you on purpose. If I want to set up tangent B, what do you do? Yeah, 3 over 4. Once again, that should come out to, okay, you can double check it. And then cosine's inverse would be what? 3 over 5.
Wait, wouldn't the tangent be 4/3?
Oh yeah, you're right, it's 4 over 3. My bad, I wrote it wrong. Good job. And then cosine, inverse of cosine B of 3/5 should also come out to 53.1. Okay, so on your homework tonight, this is what we're doing, okay? You have to be familiar with sine, cosine, and tangent for tomorrow's quiz. On top of it, write SOHCAHTOA, write out the proportion, then start it. You will miss stuff. You will miss stuff if you don't have 30, 60, 90, and 45, 45, 90 memorized.
Tomorrow's quiz, is it just over this?
What's it say on Power School? Yeah, okay. It's over, I think, 4 through 7-6, so it's not over inverse today, but inverse isn't gonna hurt you doing it tonight on homework, because it practices those same proportions again, okay? Okay, that's it. Let's do some homework.
Like, subscribe, comment, tweet me at David Dobrik. Anything else to add, Bryson?